Hello. Welcome to Friday here on the Shakespeare on the Saskatchewan Facebook page and our Shakespeare Live week. My name is Drew. I will be guiding us through Friday's video. For those of you who are unaware of what you've stumbled upon, we at Shakespeare on the Saskatchewan present a workshop series called Shakespeare Live, and we are supposed to be live in schools, showcasing a little bit of Shakespeare, teaching a little bit of Shakespeare, doing a play together. Unfortunately, we can't do that right now, so we had decided to spend a week creating these videos to share with you in hopes that we'll be able to get some of our workshop information out to the students who we otherwise won't be able to see. So these workshops have been for all grades from K to 12. The other videos are already on this Facebook page, so if you scroll back, you'll find those. If you haven't seen them, watch them. They're delightful. My name is Drew Mantyka. I'm going to be guiding us through this video on Friday, the last of these kind of videos. What I'll say about this one, most of the stuff we're going to talk about is a little more geared to grades 9 and up, that kind of 9 to 12 range. If you have young ones, or you are a younger person who's watching this video interested in some stuff to do with Shakespeare, want to have some more things to mess around and play with, jump over to the end of this video where I will be introducing a Shakespeare challenge again that is a little more suited to all age groups and everyone should participate in, though again it's going to be probably the most high schoolish level of the week. So what am I here to talk about today? I'm kind of got what I've been asked to talk about broken up into 3 sections. 4 if you count me introducing myself. I'm going to talk about what Shakespeare was like in high school for me, and how that changed and developed and led me to where I am. I'm also going to talk about some of the things that I find interesting that will be owed to Shakespeare, specifically in terms of words and language. And then I'm going to talk about some Shakespearean insults and introduce a little activity that Angela came up with that I think is delightfully fun. So yeah, we'll see how long this goes. I have a tendency to ramble about a lot, so we'll see what happens as we go here. So buckle up. So who is this person that's appeared on your computer or phone screen and is speaking to you about Shakespeare? My name is Drew Mantyka. I am one of the actors hired by Shakespeare this summer. My first experience working with the company was actually in 2017. I was a production assistant, helping build and put together the set and the site and all kinds of construction, moving dirt and rocks and sawing boards, all that fun stuff. Last year, I was the assistant director for As You Like It. If anybody saw that play, it's this one. That's Comedy of Errors. This is As You Like It. Gotta rep the merch. So that's what I got to do that year. And then this year, I have been contracted to be an actor in the company. So yeah, that's kind of fun. So where did Shakespeare start for me? Which was in high school, which is what I want to kind of talk about, because in theory, most of the people that this is for are high school students, if you found this material. Shakespeare, for me, my first exposure was in grade 9. We read Romeo and Juliet, as I'm sure a lot of you have here in Saskatoon. I went to Evan Hardy Collegiate, graduated in 2015. Any souls, let me know down in the comments. I'll, I don't know, like it or something. But yeah, so I graduated from Hardy in 2015. So most of the stuff, like most of the exact ways that I was being taught Shakespeare in high school are the same as what you're being taught now, including a lot of the same books, because my sister's in grade 9 right now, and I've seen her books. And they're the same ones I used. So read Romeo and Juliet in grade 9, and it was fine. It was fine. It wasn't the best thing we read that year, but it certainly wasn't the worst. But I didn't really get anything out of it. And then it was kind of over, and we moved on, and there was an exam or something, and then it was over. In grade 10, I was lucky enough to get to play Demetrius in A Midsummer Night's Dream on a high school production, which had much more of an impact on me than doing Romeo and Juliet in class did. Romeo and Juliet in class was whatever, and nothing really seemed extraordinary. But getting to perform Shakespeare with other people speaking the words and like having an audience and having like some of my high school friends come see the show and be like, oh, I understood what's happening. And I was like, oh, cool, we did too. So that was interesting. So that made me a little bit more excited when I headed into the back half of grade 10 and I got to read Macbeth, the Scottish play. in class. And even though I was a little more interested, a little more excited, it was very much like reading Romeo and Juliet, very dry, very bland. Except shout out to my teacher who had a killer Scottish accent. That was about the highlight of reading that in grade 10. Then my high school experience with Shakespeare finished in grade 12. We read Hamlet, and all I remember from doing that is after we read it, we watched The Lion King, because if you have read Hamlet and watched The Lion King, you know they are the same story. Yeah, look it up. Lion King 1 is Hamlet. Lion King 2 is Romeo and Juliet. Lion King 1.5 is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. These are all fun facts that are very true if you watch the movies. There's your homework. So yeah, I finished high school with a memory of doing one play in grade 10 and a bunch of boring classes. Not boring, maybe a bit tough, but just classes that didn't really pique my interest as much as I felt they could have. Especially when I started to get more experience later. So right after my first year out of high school, I was in the Persephone Young Company, and we did a show called The Romeo Project. That really changed how I look at Shakespeare. It was doing it with pure emotion, with driving to points, and just acting the stuff out of Shakespeare. Yeah, and just doing everything I could, everything we all could, to just make it have as much emotional meaning as possible. And lines started popping, audience members were weeping, crying, laughing, and just having an all-around great time, and there was so much raw emotion that I was like, okay, now I see what Shakespeare actually could be, and I'm a lot more interested in this version of it than I was in what we were reading in high school, and I wonder what changed and what made it different. So then I get to fast forward to my third year of university. I was lucky enough to direct my class doing a production of Macbeth, the Scottish play, where I was forced to learn a lot very fast. I just replicated things I had seen done in person and things I had seen done online, and went, okay, here we go. And I learned a lot there, and I was like, okay, there's something to this Shakespeare thing that I think I'm very interested in, want to keep working with. I then got lucky enough to touch it again in my fourth year of university. I acted in Henry V. If any of you saw it, shout out to you. And then the end of fourth year, I got to work a lot more in depth on Shakespeare with one of my professors who I then continued to work with, and I'm still working with a bit, learning more down that path. And I kind of really fell in love with the way Shakespeare works and with the way it's written and the way it's structured. And you can really invest into what was happening. And I look back now at my time in high school and I wonder why it took that much time for something to change. And I came up with a couple reasons for that I hope sharing with you currently in high school students will maybe help you find a way to make Shakespeare a little more interesting to you, because it is. First and foremost, the most important thing that I wish had been explained and shown to me when I was in high school, because it just wasn't quite talked about in the right way, I think, for me to at least understand it. Shakespeare, and I'm sorry for some people that might disagree with me, is just not meant to be read. It's not meant to be looked at the paper and read. It's meant to be heard. It's meant to be performed. It's a public experience together where we're sharing a thought, we're sharing ideas and having a conversation. That's how Shakespeare works. That's what it was created for. That's how he was writing these plays. So the second you get them up in a room and you have people invest and you're going back and forth, well, things just start to fall and fly into place, and it's got meaning, it's got passion, it's got humor, it's hilarious, it's sad. That's when Shakespeare opens up and becomes a lot more. And that's when you have audiences that haven't seen a Shakespeare play and have no idea any of the ins and outs of the language, and they start falling into the story and loving the story because they're able to follow that bit of it. And it's because of that interaction. It's not about reading it off the page, it's about lifting it up off the page. So that's another one thing I would recommend. Take that a step farther. If you're in grade 9 right now and over the computer screen, in your Zoom class, you're studying Romeo and Juliet, please do yourself a favor, just watch it. There's a version on Netflix, I'm pretty sure, that's okay if it's still up there. It's not otherworldly, but it's good. You can also just Google it. Just Google Romeo and Juliet productions. You'll find them. They'll be of varying levels of quality, but they'll be there. But just being able to watch any version of it will help you understand the play so much more. You'll understand it better. You'll appreciate it more. That's my firm belief. Certainly much more than you ever will just by reading it. Yeah, that would be my big piece of advice. Watch it live or on video if you can. It'll help you understand and grasp it so much more. Also, when you're like reading Shakespeare stuff, like don't be afraid to look stuff up. We all look stuff up in the professional circles I've been in, and the semi-professional circles, and the universal circles I've been in. We're constantly going, I don't know what this is, and looking at the glossary in the bottom of the book, or like Googling stuff the entire time. Don't be afraid to look stuff up. We all do it. There are words in Shakespeare that just aren't used anymore because they don't make sense in our current world. That's fine. They're still wonderful words, and if you learn them, maybe you'll be able to use them in your regular life too. Or not. You never know. I use some of them. I probably shouldn't, but that's fine. So yeah, sources that you can use, like if you've got a Shakespeare book, a lot of them will have right on the bottom just notes in there that define what some of the lines and words mean. No Fear Shakespeare is a great tool when you're starting out in order to be able to look at stuff a little more clearly, because it gives you that side-by-side comparison. Obviously, it's not the be-all, end-all, and obviously there's a lot more going on than just what No Fear can give you, but it's still a wonderful place for you to be starting to look through stuff. So yeah, that's kind of my basic little talk of like the path I took from grade 9 student reading Romeo and Juliet to not really caring and understanding, for lack of a better description, over to someone who wants to be performing and working with the words and dissecting it as much as I can. The second thing I want to talk about that I think is a little fun and starts to bridge us more towards our activity for the day is things we owe to Shakespeare. Words and whatnot that we would... Actually, you know what? Before I go on to that, maybe I'll just talk real quickly about what I'm currently interested in, because I mean, we got time. Yeah, to bridge to that, post on the Facebook page today, theoretically today, or at least parts of it, is a document that Angela created. Actually, Angela's been talking about it in her live stream. She'll be talking about it as well. Is this document she created that she entitled Demystifying Shakespeare. And it's a brilliant little document that is just all about ways to get into reading it, to like, what does thou and they mean? Like all these different words like put together and broken down, like talks a little bit about the poetry and stuff. And speaking of the poetry, that's where my interest has started to lie this last year with the more work I've been doing and the more things I've been studying, is the poetic structure of this, because I believe that obviously Shakespeare made these choices for a reason, and I think those reasons had thematic impacts, had emotional impacts, had story impacts that we don't necessarily always see if we're not paying attention for them. And I think if we use those as artists, we can make the audience follow along with them too, even if they're not even sure what's happening, because I think it's that well written. So that's what I'm currently exploring, is the poetic structure of things, how it defines character, how it lends to a play, right down to the nitty-gritty portion of it. And it's that stuff, to me, that Shakespeare will never be matched as. He was worlds ahead of anyone else at the time, and he's worlds ahead of anybody else since, in terms of doing that specific thing. And for me, at least, that's why my interest in Shakespeare is as bright as ever right now. Little sidebar into that, most of the rest of it is certainly not for this video right now. That's already 13 minutes, and I've only got through one part. So I hope you're still bearing with me. I'm going to take a drink of water now. You can watch me. It's delicious. All right, so back to what I was saying a little bit before. There's lots of stuff that we use in our everyday world that we owe to Shakespeare, including a lot of words and phrases. I could spend a lot of time talking about everything that we owe exactly to Shakespeare, but these ones I find a little bit more interesting. So I pulled some of my favorites and wrote them down, just so I didn't have to spit them at you from memory, because that would just be a lot of me standing and going, as I try to think of them. So yeah, Shakespeare had this wonderful habit, or thing he liked to do maybe, where he would run into a situation where he was describing something or writing a line, and he'd just make up a phrase or make up a word. And then the plays were popular and big enough, and the words were interesting, and phrases were, good enough, that they just became part of everyday speaking to the point where they're still there. and we don't even realize it. Like, fun fact, the whole like term "send him packing," like you hear in sports all the time. Oh, the Lakers sent the Clippers packing in that one. That's from King Henry IV Part 1. It's a Falstaff line. And it's still used every day, and it's used by people that have no idea that's where it came from. And I think that's interesting that someone that long ago in a different country is still having an impact on what we're saying right now. Same with like, as luck would have it, that statement again is Falstaff, different play from Merry Wives of Windsor, but still a Falstaff line from Shakespeare. The term "neither here nor there," another one that you hear a lot. Now that was neither here nor there. Kind of a statement, was popularized in Othello and Merry Wives of Windsor. Might have existed before that, but certainly gained traction as a common saying in that time. Like, I waited with bated breath. Shylock, Merchant of Venice. Wild Goose Chase, grade 9s. Do you recognize that one? It's Mercutio from Romeo and Juliet, off on a wild goose chase. He says it slightly more flamboyantly because he's Mercutio, but it essentially translates to wild goose chase. And there we go. Heart of Gold. That guy, he's a good guy. He's got a heart of gold. Yeah, that's Pistol describing King Henry in Henry V. That was a foregone conclusion. That's from Othello. All that glitters is not gold. Merchant of Venice. The game is afoot. Henry IV 1 again. Even technically the origin of the knock knock joke, like knock knock, who's there, is the porter from Macbeth, who you'll see us play with, well, me specifically play with a little next week. Yeah, hopefully. Stay tuned for that. There's a tease for you. But it's crazy, all those terms that you wouldn't even think of. And there's more than that, too. My Kingdom for a Horse is from Richard III. So you'd just be shocked at how many words and phrases that are currently said are directly pulled from things that Shakespeare wrote. Because he was that popular and that interesting, and he made up that many words and phrases. Because he could. Because he was that good. And I think that's really interesting. It shows his impact in that way, too. In terms of the rest of this Demystifying Shakespeare document, I'll let Angela go through most of it because I'm already at 17 minutes here, which is pretty long for these kind of a thing. But I recommend, if, like, listen to the video, listen to what you got to say. If you have any trouble following through things, it's a really good way of breaking things down. It talks about the poetic structure. It talks about an I am. How Shakespeare wrote. And I am is the form in which Shakespeare wrote most of his poetry. What's a good example off the top of my head of an I am? An I am is any sort of stress or unstressed and stressed syllables combined together. But soft what light through yonder window breaks. You say it like that, it's that. That's how most of Shakespeare wrote his stuff. Also, what I kind of study right now is those patterns. What I'm super interested in. I'm interested specifically when he breaks those patterns. But as a general rule, he either writes in or he writes in normal talking, and he goes back and forth when best suits him or the characters for various thematic reasons. But yeah, I'll let Angela go over that a little bit more in depth in her live stream, and hopefully she'll share some of her package with you, because I think it's a wonderful little tool if you're like, I've stumbled across a sentence, I don't know how to break it down. The package will have some ideas to probably give you some clues and ways in. Okay, we're at 18 minutes, 19 minutes basically already. I'm going to introduce you to the activity that Angela came up with. It's also from her Demystifying Shakespeare package, but I think it's delightful. I think there's some ways we can have a little bit of fun with it over the interwebs on Facebook. So another thing that Shakespeare was famous for that I've always kind of just really loved as like a soft spot for my own humor and enjoyment is his insults. Shakespeare loves to rip into his own characters, to dissect them and all that fun stuff. And of course, because he's Shakespeare, he does it in the most flamboyant ways. Actually, this mug I've been drinking out of this entire video is full of various Shakespearean insults just written on it. Yeah, so I thought I'd choose the thematic mug to be having my water to sip out of while we're going. But yeah, it's like Shakespeare was all over having these great insults thrown at people, like, well, even like from last summer, I do desire we may be better strangers. That's wonderful. All the infections that the sun sucks up. It's just, yeah, foot liquor. I mean, sometimes you just got to be a little more crass. Roast meat for worms. Oh, what else is fantastic on here? Poisonous bunched-backed toad. That's a good one to me. A lot of my favorite Shakespearean insults, because some of them are longer 2-sentence insults where you pick somebody apart. But something like poisonous bunch-backed toad, those 3-word ones to me have always stuck out and have always been quite fun, which is delightful because Angela's come up with a way for us to make up our own 3-part Shakespeare insults. So what she's created, and it will be somewhere on the Facebook page at this time, probably not in this video, but it'll be somewhere around. It'll be a sheet. It's got columns like this. I'll have some words on it. If it's not posted somewhere, I'll throw a copy of it in the comments or something so we can all have it. And so basically what you do is you take one word from column A, you take one word from column B, and you take one word from column C. You put them together with a thou at the front, and you just come up with your very own Shakespearean insult. So for me, randomly doing one now, thou jaded, ill-composed Malkin. Got him. Or saucy, pinch-spotted ruffian. I mean, every single one of these is just gold. We'll do one more. You knavish, lily-livered maltworm. I mean, that's just gold. So yeah, what I want you to do, take those columns of words, put them together in your best insult you can. Either record yourself saying it or put your best ones down in the comments. Also write your interpretation of what it means, your translation, so the modern English version of what the line means. So you can come up with the best ones. I'll be in there looking around, poking my head around to see who comes up with the best ones. That's an activity for all ages. Find the best way to insult somebody. Friendly, of course, all in good jesting fun, as all of Shakespeare's insults are. So yeah, let me see what you come up with. I gave you a couple examples. It's very quick and fun to come up with them. Yeah, I think that's gonna about do it for this video. Yeah, if you enjoyed the video, and you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. Either me, maybe Angela or Jackie or Crystal will be in there. We could answer some if you have any based on what I talked about. I know this video was a little more lecture-y than the other ones, but we did warn you it was for mostly grade 9 to 12s, and I tried to keep it in that range. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you maybe learned something. Yeah, if I had to leave you anything, I'd say if you're studying a Shakespeare play, watch it, because it only takes 2 to 3 hours of your life, and you'll learn way more and actually enjoy yourself a little bit more than you would otherwise. Other than that, everyone, stay at home, stay safe, wash your hands, read and watch some Shakespeare. Yeah, and I hope to see you in the tent soon. Ta-da, everybody. Have a lovely Friday and a lovely weekend. Yeah, that's about it. You infinite and endless liar and hourly promise breaker. You quintessence of dust. Long-tongued babbling gossip. I could go on all day. Anyway. See you later. Bye-bye.